IVM.
Hi everybody, just wanted to ask everyone for a quick favor. We're running a brand survey right now and would really appreciate it if you could let us know what you think about the advertising on IVM. Go to ivmpodcast.com/survey and do let us know. As part of this, we'll be selecting 10 random participants and sending them some IVM swag, so do fill out those surveys.
कृपया ध्यान दीजिए, the language used on the podcast may not be fit for consumption. We warn you, tread carefully. But listen, yaar, don't be so conservative. Hello, it's called Cyrus Says. We've got a very important guest, meeting him in a few seconds. Before that, spare a thought, spare a tear. Feel bad for this industry. I'm talking about trousers and jeans and pants, long pants, even short pants, really suffering because of the pandemic. Sales are very low. And the fact of the matter is that once the pandemic, if it is ever reversed, doesn't mean we're going to go back to 100% pant wearing and attending offices and attending functions, events, etc. As much as we used to. So if you look at it at 20% now in the flesh, doing all these things, it'd probably go up to 50 or 60% at best. So they still have a loss coming out of this pandemic years later. So it's horrible news for the pant industry. And I just feel that we should try and help in our own way by going and buying pants, because people who buy 6 trousers will now be buying 2 or 3. And that'll suffice for a generation, it looks like. So be very, very careful if you're a pant owner. You have to now reinvent yourself. But I have the man who may help us, because he's got his eye on everything. He knows how to make a sale. He knows how to teach you how to make a sale. And he's right here on our show. And he's got a huge, huge biodata. It's just the biggest I've ever seen. But that's because he deserves it. Sometimes we have guests who really, we just heard about them 5 minutes ago. No, I'm kidding. They're all great.
A wise man once said, traveling, it makes you speechless, then turns you into a storyteller.
Well, listen to such travel stories and experiences exploring India on the Musafir Stories with us, Saif and Faiza.
Catch us on the IVM website, app, or wherever you get your podcasts from.
So let's welcome on our show Gaurav Bhagat from the Gaurav Bhagat Academy, the GBA as it's called. It is one of Asia's largest sales training and business mentorship academy. And believe me, this is something that a person struggling in the business or starting in the business will be happy to get into it. This institution, a guiding light, so to speak. He himself is a business prodigy. The GBA has already trained over 1,000 people and a host of large Indian and global companies. Get the names here, folks. Agility, HDFC Bank, HDFC Life Insurance, the $1 Million Roundtable, CJ Darcy, Logistics, Vega, RSG, and many, many others. All right, so it's huge, it's big. In the words of Donald Trump, it's really huge. Gaurav, thank you for coming on our show. But if I just keep reading out your biodata, the hour will pass in no time. And plus, you'll start getting a little embarrassed, I thought. So we'll stop right there. But let's just give a little introduction to yourself. So this is the Gaurav Bhagat Academy is like a finishing school for business?
Yeah, Cyrus, first of all, thank you for having me here. It is an absolute honor and a pleasure. And been following your show and been seeing some of the amazing guests that you've had, the amazing content that you've been creating. Truly the need of the hour today. And thank you, of course, for having me on. It is an honor and a pleasure. So yes, of course, thank you for mentioning some of the clients and the great work that we've been doing in the space of sales. As someone, who started out selling when I was 6 years old, it was interesting how sales was always in my, DNA.
That's exploitation. It's in the Constitution. Child labor or something. I have to just check it. Let me check it. Yeah. What does that mean?
I had parents who would say that, dude, if you want to go out and buy that particular thing, earn it. So it wasn't about getting anything easy.
Are you kidding me? Yeah. At 6?
At 6. So, of course, like I said, they pamper me. But if I really wanted that indulgence, it would be about go out there and make it for yourself. So
you understood the value of things at the age of 6. Where all of us had to do was kind of fool our parents to emotionally blackmail them to getting the extra toffee or coffee or whatever it was, and you were doing it yourself. Give us an example, if that's really something that went on.
The joke, in fact, growing up was, and I think it's something that just came. And I was born in Calcutta, even though we're a Punjabi family. I was born in Cal, and the joke almost was that were you switched at birth with a Marwadi kid in the next cot? Because it's not that my parents wouldn't indulge me, but if I wanted something above and beyond, they're like, earn it. I'm like, you know what, I can do that. And I would do stuff like, run libraries or, trade comics and a whole bunch of stuff. In fact, I used to, growing up, I'm sure.
Hey, Gaurav, I also did that, but not at 6, at about 12. I tried to start my own library and at 1 rupee a comic and all that. It ran into the ground. It's a long story, but yeah, well, that's amazing. So
all
we
used to have Tinkle comics as well, right? So I used to write for Tinkle. I used to send like Uncle Pie in Bombay, a whole bunch of stories.
Yes. Oh my God! Yeah,
and he would say, stop. He said, you're never getting published. Please stop sending me story. I tried everything. I would enter contests. I tried it all.
What are you saying? Excellent. Yeah. But nothing bothered you. You just water off a duck's back. You just kept going. Even though these guys weren't showing interest. But it's an amazing story. So at the age of 6, in a sense, you were hungry. You're a bit of a hustler from that age, in a sense. And I mean this in a positive way. Yeah,
pretty much. Like I said, it was about, getting those... few bonus things that the parents would indulge you in. So it's interesting. So the entrepreneurship bug probably bit me a little early, and people didn't get me. People didn't even get me at 16. When I was 16, I was like launching my own board games, and I was traveling around the country, going to toy shops and selling these board games. And I would walk into Bangalore, and I would walk into, this distributor, and I'd say that I've come here to sell my board game. And they're like, "Aapke mummy papa kahan hai?" I'm like, "What does mummy papa have to do with this, dude? I'm the guy you need to be having a conversation with, And it was interesting. So interesting times.
Gaurav, so you were the app guy of the 90s a few years back. Imagine how much money you made on that. Your one board game would be, people in France are playing it, in China are playing it. What are you saying? That's amazing.
Yeah.
So this is not just sales now. This is really the innovation and creativity and all that comes into place. You're more like an entrepreneur completely. Yeah.
Pretty much. But I do run multiple companies. And of course, I think where the insight and where a lot of companies and people really relate with me is the fact that, it's not only theory, you've actually been there, done that. I mean, I've got my ass whipped, multiple times in multiple professions. And there's been a lot of... what would I call them? Smashed, bashed moments in life. So I even have a book coming out, which is called A Smashed, Bashed, Yet Not Dashed. So it's about perseverance and staying true to the cause.
It amazes me how many successful people always love talking about their failure. But the other type, the people who are not able to get over failure, never want to mention it. It's almost like, why does that happen?
Yeah.
It's almost like you gloat over the failure because now, things you have to go through that or whatever. But when you're not getting the success, you never mention it. You sort of just don't talk about it.
Very true. Very true.
But let's not waste time with my philosophy. Let's get straight into your career and life.
Sure.
So you're saying you were an entrepreneur that was there, like a young Sachin Tendulkar of the business world. You couldn't stop yourself. Then you went the formal way. What was the training like?
So interestingly, I mean, I intended to go the formal way. And I was in the first year of college when, one day my dad comes home to me and he says that, Gaurav, we need to take a walk. And, we take this walk. And at the time, I've been in a relatively privileged, Delhi family, traveled extensively, had access to all the nightclubs, the Goises and the Gungaroos, all the places that were happening in the 90s.
God. You're my age group. You're saying names which, oh God, amazing. Yeah. I hope people in the podcast know what we're talking about.
Yeah.
Gungaroos, I mean, you couldn't get in. Oof, yeah.
Agreed.
Go on.
Yeah. So, the early 90s, in fact, so we're talking about 95, actually, when I was in my first year of college. And dad comes home one day, he says, we need to take a walk. And we take this walk. And he's like, there's a situation that's happened. And I said, tell me. He's like, I was trying something with a relative. It was a global venture. We put everything in and we wiped out. So I'm like, when you say wiped out, what do we have left? And he's like, the money in my wallet and that's it. And I'm like, okay, what do you want me to do? Do you want me to go out there and get myself, a job? Should I be working with some of your friends who you're connected with? He's like, I don't know what you're going to do, but you're going to figure something out. And I always had that, entrepreneurial bug. So he said, bhai, naukari to nahi karega tu. He says, I think you're a guy who will, in due course, go out and create jobs for people. I think you will impact people. Yeah, but it's not going to be someone that, you're going to be working. And next day I went and I was actually in a boarding school and I'd gone and took out 10,000 rupees from my credit card because that was my starting capital. And that's how I actually started my first company when I was 19 years old. So I wanted to go the formal route. I was doing English honors in Bhagat Singh, but I couldn't even, go back to college I used to go back to give my exams. But the joke with my wife is, did you even graduate college, show me your degree? And I'm like, I never even went and picked it up. So interestingly, that was my story on the education front.
Well, that's an amazing story. So let's get this straight. Your dad came and told you that everything's gone.
Yeah. Everything's gone.
I mean
that's wiped out. Like
that's quite an emotional
down to zero. Where,
but that's very emotional sort of blow. I mean, also not just physical.
Yeah.
And you were, I mean, so your thought immediately. I think this is also important for us to understand. Your thought immediately is not to cry and into your pillow and say, "Oh God, Daddy ne kya kiya," etc., etc. Your thought immediately was to let's figure a way out. Is this fair to say?
100%. I think that's always been me. It's always been about going out there and finding a solution. It's never about crying over the problem. I went to a school which is up in the hills, and our motto was never give in, right? So the Lawrence School Sanar up, just in the hill opposite Kasoli. I mean, it's about never giving in. It's about, you get beaten down, but you just get up and you get fighting. So yes, 2-3 days of, extreme anxiety, to put it mildly. But I said, boss, karna hai to karna hai, right? So that's pretty much what it became around.
It's an amazing story. I just want to dwell into it for a second because I love this. I'm fascinated by successful people and also the bad moments. Do you always feel confident? Because I noticed that also seems to be correlated to people who do really well. Even in the low moments, there's a sense of confidence. Of course, you were upset. You're human. But
right.
There's a line of confidence still there. It doesn't ever break.
Yeah. That's an interesting question. And the point is, when you're being looked up to by your clients, I'm talking now a few years, later, when you're being looked up by your stakeholders, by your family members, even by your close friends. Of course, there are times where, you're really feeling it. But on the exterior, you can't show it. So I think that's just been me. And a lot of people who read me really well, they often, say that you're almost like a coconut. It's like a little hard on the outside, but soft on the inside. But yeah, even if I'm feeling it, I think I've done a good job over time to overcome.
Also racist term, but we won't get into that. Yeah.
True that.
Yeah.
True that.
We had another gentleman on who had a very amazing story, great career path, also huge entrepreneur. And again, the same thing was just going to Australia and trying to cope there in a really strange place, from the cushy Delhi home that he had, etc., etc. And I felt, and he also agreed while thinking about it, that was a more powerful moment in terms of growing up and being a man than all that was to follow after that one big thing. So maybe in your case as well, this is, a family that loses everything. And you're a minor. You're not even, it's not even your fault from any angle. So I'm sure we're just saying it in a few sentences, but I'm sure that was a monumental moment in your life. But then let's take it ahead then. 100%. So you then started becoming an entrepreneur at the age of 19.
Yeah. So I actually got into the gifting space and I started my first, gifting company, Corporate Gifts and Promotional Products. And the company is, of course, very much there. It's actually now one of the big players, not only in India, but in Asia. And we now have offices in 6 cities. We have 100 plus people. But initially, really hard. I got so much rejection. And which is why I said, I was meant to be a sales guy, sales coach / business coach, because I had been turned out of offices where I'd walk in and they're like, where is your office? What is your infrastructure? Why should we even be doing business with you? Large organizations that turned us out, who 10 years later became some of our key clients. But initially, the amount of rejection that I had actually faced was crazy. And people would say, oh, GB, today you run these great organizations. I said, bhai, us time, there was 2 people. Okay, there was me and there was the office boy Narendra, who's still there. And I was the CEO, was also the chaprasi. Okay, if it meant, taking an auto to deliver cartons and stuff, I would do it. And today, when we have new kids who come on and they sometimes, say, oh, that's the driver's job or that's the logistics guy's job. I'm like, bhai, sab kuch kiya humne. I said, like from, sitting and, making all the deliveries, carrying 100 cartons. I remember we used to do work for Maruti. Maruti used to be a Jeevan Prakash building in Delhi. 11th floor, lift wasn't working. Goods had to reach up.
Oh.
Yeah. Imagine walking 11 floors in CP, okay, with 20 cartons, okay, when you're doing it yourself. Okay. And it had to happen because there was an event. So there were crazy times, crazy things that happened. But truly, I think the school of hard knocks, and you can't beat that in life.
But just talking to people there who are trying to learn from your life, and of course everybody's experience is not going to be the same. When you're just a fresh-faced kid with a little idea going to this big corporate entity and without any influence or network,
yeah.
How do you get them to listen anyway? I'm just thinking it will be almost impossible.
So times have changed a lot. Today, when a 16-year-old walks into an office and says he has a crazy idea, people think that pata nahi hai, must be the next, Steve Jobs.
Great startup.
It's the entire perception changed.
That's true.
At that time, I can tell you, they'd laugh at you. I'm talking about, going even as a 16-year-old first. Before even this happened, when I was doing the board games, and I would walk into some of the, wholesalers that I talk about, they're like, boss, aapke mummy papa ka hai, aap kahan ho, So that's one piece. And even in the corporate thing, when I started out early, I remember going to this one particular company, and this guy, procurement guy, he's testing me. He picks up this diary and he says, iska paper ka kitna GSM hoga? Right? And he knew I didn't know my subject 100%. He said, 300 GSM. I said, ha, 300 GSM. Now, obviously, that's not true. An inner diary page is more like a 75 to an 80 GSM. And when I said 300, he says, thank you. You don't know your stuff. He said, when you figure out your stuff, come back to me. Until then, don't bother.
Damn it. Whatever.
And then I realized about, how much you have to actually know your subject before you can just go out. And you can't go out there and wing it. There are great conversationalists who can just go out there and wing it. It's not always going to happen.
So it's the opposite of television, where we just wing it and make it up on the spot. And in fact, the Delhi confidence is very good on television. You just can go with it and don't worry about it. And even argue the statistics. It's never a problem.
Agreed.
But I get what you're saying. saying.
Yeah.
But I was just trying to think, how will they take you seriously when you're young and unknown, and a country like ours is all about networking and influencer, kiska pehchan hai and all that nonsense. So do you remember if there's
it's persistence. It's persistence
but
and
was there an
follow-up.
opening? Was there one time when you broke through the whatever ceiling, whatever you want to call it?
There was actually, and it happened with Maruti, funnily. And Lintas was the agency for Maruti, and there was a guy called Depier Dam, and now we're going back, 22 years. And Dam, saw my small listing I had of Yellow Pages. Tata Press Yellow Pages used to be there. I used to have a small listing which was like 1.5 inches, wide. And Dam calls me. He said, "Tu board game banata hai?" And I said, "Yeah." He said, "Maruti mein opportunity hai. Jigsaw puzzle chahiye. Auto Expo aa raha hai." I'm like, "Kar lete hain." And I walk into, Maruti subsequently, and Lintas and Maruti office were very close by. And there's a gentleman called Mr. Madhusudan, who's fantastic. I mean, if it wasn't for him, nothing would have happened for me. And you have these key moments and key people in your life who change everything. And Madhu looks at me and same thing, I'm 21 now. And he looks at me and he says that, "Are you sure you can pull it off? 20,000 jigsaw puzzles, 14 days, Auto Expo is coming." I said, "Boss, tension nahi hai, ho jayega." And I come downstairs and call my dad. I said, "I picked up this mandate. I have no idea how. Okay, I think we're dead, but we need to figure it out." But that guy and his belief, I think that was, really one of the instrumental turning points of my life. He's in Bangalore now. Every time in Bangalore, whenever I'm there, always have breakfast with him because it's just gratitude for what he did. And I think gratitude is something that's very, very important, in our lives as well.
So in all the sales spiel, oh, that's a tough word to say, sales spiel. All the sales spiel, there's also a bit of karma. There's also a bit of right place, right time. No matter what we say, there's a bit of fortune, luck, destiny.
100%. Like I'm also a bit of a poker player. And I'd say, poker ke andar how there's, luck, there's skill and there's psychology. Entrepreneurship is the same way. Luck does play an important part, irrespective of what people say. And when you think about it, people say, "Oh, I had a bad beat in life and business." It can absolutely happen. So even in terms of, just like in poker and in business and in life, there will be an element of luck, and it could be a pretty substantial amount, as much as even 30%, if you kind of think about it.
Yeah, but it all goes back to the young teenage Gaurav thinking to himself that, okay, so we've got the hard knocks coming, but let's figure a way out and I'm going to keep going. I think we're again simplifying something which is monumentally large for me to understand first. It's a very courageous sort of point. And it's also, for me, I just love the confidence. There's a certain confidence, maybe even a swagger that, okay, fine, I'll just keep going. So I think that lesson cannot be learned except by actually, it's your testing your mettle. It just happens when it happens. And, you pass that test. And I think then it all becomes a little, I won't say easier, but you're not going to be stopped. The train is on now.
Okay.
So let's take it further now. Tell us a little bit as you get into the GBA as well.
Right.
How did the big leap happen? Obviously, now you've got more than one contact.
Yeah. So interestingly, the GBA happened pretty much again by chance. And I was the gifting company was already doing great. We were now in multiple cities. We were doing pretty exceptionally well. And one day I got a call from a friend, and his name is Meher Patel, and he's like, "Dude, have you checked out this thing called Cardone's University, like Cardone University?" I'm like, "No idea." He's like, "Check out this website." Went on the site, filled out this form, and of course this turns out to be Grant Cardone, the great Grant Cardone, from the US, who again is an exceptional human being and story himself. And we use Grant Cardone for Consortium Gifts, which is my gifting company. And within 6 months we doubled in terms of top line.
Wow.
Right, 6 months and we doubled. Right, and it's a big investment. It's not a cheap thing. You put down tens of thousands of US dollars, and then I make my way to the US, because one of the things when we signed up was also that you get onto Grant Cardone's platform, but you also get to meet him. And there I actually met him, and he spoke about his vision and what he wanted to do, and how he's been a struggling guy who's now a global figure, star of undercover billionaire and all of that. And he said that I need people to take forward my knowledge, my insight, my legacy. And within 5 minutes, I'm like, where do I sign up? Because I just knew that this stuff works. I knew that bachpan se sales kar raha hu. I knew this is what I can teach. I knew I had the journey. I knew he had the content and the vehicle. It was destiny. And that happened. That was now 3.5 years ago. And what we've achieved in those last 3 years is crazy. People say, "Bhai, matlab, ye to 20 saal mein nahi ho sakta." And I said, truly, where there's a will, there's a way. It's definitely going to happen. So, yeah, that would be my thoughts on that.
But the idea for you to do the GBA, to have your own version?
Interesting question. It happened on a flight. And I did mention that, my in-laws are from Bengal. I was on a flight, Delhi to Bagdogra. And I read this one book, which I recommend everyone should read. Okay, all viewers, listeners, everyone. That Start With Why by Simon Sinek. And if you're not a reader, okay, at least watch Simon Sinek's TED Talk. I think 2009, Start With Why. I mean, that just flipped the switch. And I said, "Okay, I'm making money. I've got everything going for me, but what is my why? What is truly my purpose? And then once I started, thinking about that question, okay, then I knew that, okay, I have lived, the journey, I have lived the path and everything else, but how can I make this happen for other people? I mean, today we are a country which has amazing potential, truly at the cusp of, greatness. I truly believe that, the golden era of India is now here, but a lot of people need a lot of hand holding, a lot of guiding. And that's when the GBA came on, because I said that I need to take, and I call this my why now, and everyone I meet, I tell them that take 100,000 business owners, okay, and help them add 100 jobs, right? And also take 9 lakh working professionals and help them live what is called, the 10x life. So the 10x is, what you see on my label pin as well. So truly that has become, the reason and my why. And truly everything that I'm doing right now is driven by that. So finding your why is very, very important.
Okay, so finding your why. What is the guy's name again? The
Simon Sinek. So it's Simon Sinek. And the book is called Start With Why. And the podcast, the TED Talk is, in fact, again, Start With Why. 2009, it's on YouTube. Everyone must watch it. It'll change your life.
Simon Sinek. Do not confuse him with Shiv Sinek, which is a person who's following a political party in Maharashtra. Very different. Their books are a little different. And it doesn't start with why. We ask why sometimes. Yeah. Excellent. So let's now get into, because we have time constraints and so much to ask you. And sorry to try and put together your entire career, which deserves much more time in just a few minutes. But these are, I thought, the questions that that would also make sense to people who are not looking just at sales or the corporate world. So let's start with this one. Importance of entrepreneurship education in schools and universities as a formal learning.
Oh, so important. So important. And again, I go back to, and of course, for my last 2 years, I came to DPS Mathura Road in Delhi. And while I was there, I started a little bit of entrepreneurial ventures. I started making those WWF trump cards. I think I made the first pack, ever. And I started, just selling them a little bit, within my school. My brother, who was in 4 years, younger than me, he was in Columbus. He started selling them in his school. There was a riot, people were like ready to kill each other. My parents got called in, by the principal. My brother's principal also called in the parents, and they said, "Aapka ladka yahan dhanda karne aata hai ki matlab padhai karne aata hai?" And I was 16. My brother was 12, and fortunately, thanks to again my parents who said, "Chal, theek hai," they had to say what they had to say. Just keep doing what you have to do. But it just takes me back to the point that it's such an important aspect. I mean, just thinking big, entrepreneurship. Just looking to create, value, for others, give before you get. I mean, such important aspects. And nahi sikhate school mein, which is tragic. And I really hope that, more and more of these initiatives come up in time, because the world really needs that right now.
And Gaurav, also as the world evolves, some subjects I won't use the word redundant, but the importance is a little less. Let's not get into which ones, but maybe we need to look at curriculums again. And what you're saying, there is a certain practical approach. I'm also thinking as a kid, I'll be more interested in what you're saying about entrepreneurship and how to make money, how to give a service. Basically, I think we are too happy about trying to make money. It's more about how to create a service or a need or satisfy a need, etc. All that.
Yeah.
So I wonder whether maybe there's a whole shake-up.
Absolutely, and have a problem-solving mindset. A lot of people are always, running away from problems. And truly, I mean, I know it's cliched and I know it's been said a lot, but truly, the bigger the problem the you solve, I mean, the more money there is, to be made. And if everyone just comes in, addressing that problem, and sometimes people come up with, the simplest of solutions for something which hasn't been handled, and hence, they really make it big on the basis of that.
Anyway, just now that you mentioned Columbus, my cousin Ashish Gidwani, rings a bell, but he's 51, so I don't know where that place is in.
Yeah, slightly senior. I'm 45
you remember him?
now, so no.
Oh, do you know? What about this guy called Shah Rukh Khan? You might remember him.
Of course, yeah.
That's not fair. What's wrong with my very first cousin, man? Not fair at all. Yeah. Okay, let's look at another question again. Partnering with people in a thought-provoking and creative process that inspires them to maximize their personal and professional potential. What does that mean exactly?
So I've always been very big on collaboration. I've always big on, reaching out to people and seeing, the things you can create, together. Because often I see that there's, at least in the past, there was this big, always about competition. Like even when I was starting out in sales training, I reached out to a lot of people who were established in the industry, and I said that, let's do something together. And they would come back and they said, no, my clients are my most important thing. How can I, share them with you? I'm like, how many clients do you have? The guy would say 5. I'm like, boss, you have to impact 5 billion people. 5 mein tum log khush ho to kaise hoga? So partnerships, very, very important aspect. Competition is truly a thing of the past. It's all about collaboration today. It's about, pulling in your resources. And of course, goes without saying that it's about, just making the magic happen together.
But also, I suppose proportion ki baat hai usme, because if you're in New Zealand, 5 is a business, but in India, 5 million is a business. So I guess as we created 1 billion vaccines, I was just looking at that, which means how much percentage of the country has had one shot. That's another story. This is a big one. Generating employability and not just employment.
Yeah.
What is employability?
Yeah,
The ability to succeed.
Yeah, so employability, the two aspects to this. And of course, this evening I'm speaking, for one of the colleges in Delhi as well, where we're talking about exactly this. Now, there are two aspects on employability. One is, also being someone who goes into an organization and brings so much value to that organization that, you tend to grow and of course, have the whole organization grow with you as well. So that's one aspect. The other aspect of employability obviously is that, do you want to be someone who works, or do you want to be someone who can be creating jobs for others? Like almost like the question that my dad asked me, where he says, time to step up. And I'm saying, do I get a job? Or, do I do something? He's like, nahi bhai, naukri to nahi karni, right? So that could be, another aspect to it. But there are very important, subsets on this as well in terms of some of the things that you have to be doing. But truly, I think one of the things that the pandemic has done, and everyone says crazy 18 months. I'm like, boss, matlab, there's going to be such a shift coming in the mindset of people where they're going to be saying, you know what, I don't need to be an employee anymore. I can actually be an entrepreneur. I can actually be someone who creates jobs and value for others. So big things coming, especially for the youth of today, the school guys, the college guys, the recently graduated guys, matlab, revolution coming for sure.
Hence my rant on pants at the top of the show, because people are going to become self-styled sort of businessmen, or more than businessmen, just communicators from home. So yes, pants are going to take a beating. I won't make you take that question. That's a ridiculous question. Never take that question. But this is something, again, you'll be getting all the time. I don't know if there's any answers which are correct or incorrect. Future of economy post-COVID. It's a generic question, but should we be positive? People keep saying we should be positive in India. I don't know what that exactly means. You yourself has said that actually at the beginning of the show.
Yeah. So I'm a big believer in the India story. I think there's a lot of opportunity coming. Unfortunately, China's on the wrong side of a lot of big countries right now. The US being one of them.
Bad PR, sir. Great food.
Australia, China is also having their issues. So I think there's a tremendous opportunity. I mean, we're truly scratching the surface there, and I'm very, very bullish. I mean, everyone. I'm not saying bullish from the stock market perspective because आज तो कुछ भी खरीद लो
वो भी चल रही गाड़ी. I mean, nothing. People are saying over 100,000 points next year and all. I don't know to believe them. So. If that's correlation to the rest of Indian business.
So definitely. I mean, every conversation that you're having today, everyone's talking about, how good things are looking. Obviously, there are some things that have to continue to stay in our favor. Hopefully no more, pandemic wave, Delta, Theta, whatever is coming next. Hopefully that doesn't happen. I think it's also very, very important that all the supply chain issues that happen, that, stays in control. Commodity prices are going through the roof. Today we have some orders to be implemented. 100,000 pieces of, some notebooks have to go to one of the Bajaj companies. Paper nahi mil raha hai. They're like, paper khatam ho gaya. I'm like, paper khatam ho gaya? Matlab, what the hell are you guys talking about? So there are supply chain issues, there have been, which are being created artificially or what globally. That's a whole different thing. But my belief, golden era of India starting. I think, and I wouldn't be surprised. And stock market is something that's very, very close to my heart as well. And I said, there is a little bit of sense and reasoning, but a long-term player in the market, a long-term believer in India only weighs up. So 100%.
But this is rumor in the business. I have a lot of friends who work in the Lal Street, etc. Is that there'll be like a boost? Not just India. Many of the bigger countries will try to boost the market and create a sort of false rise and can go really, to 6 figures and above, and then there will be a correction. Is that just a silly rumor, or is that a possibility?
Conspiracy theorists, of course, there are many. Yeah. And, you'll always have opinions and counter opinions. I mean, today, if you go to YouTube and you do stock market, you'll probably have, a few 100,000 people pop up and everyone's got like 400, 500,000 followers. Sometimes I wonder, sales ki jagah ka stock market training mein ghus jate, to the following would have been quite different.
Exactly.
But there's a whole bunch of stuff. And I think my advice only is buy value, buy good companies. Don't buy the trash. Don't buy the penny stocks which have no promoters. I mean, buy companies that you'd like to own, fundamentally strong companies, fundamentally strong businesses, because in the long term, there is no way. I mean, short term, gir sakta hai, there are corrections that can happen. But in the long term, again, just like the economy, it only looks up. And if you have value, definitely go out there and take it. That's very, very important.
There is going on to another question, which is corporate diversity. Is language a barrier in sales training? We were this huge communication issues across India where, I remember in MTV, we went to meet cable operators to get our, channels up and running in certain areas. So deep in the South, for example, there were places where they don't speak English or Hindi, and our team didn't have a, language skill of Malayalam, for example. And it was a real headache. Just trying to have a conversation. And then I felt what a waste of time because you're not able to charm the person because you can't even speak. So what's your take on that?
It's very, very important, of course. And even initially, when I was talking to Grant Cardone, and he said, if we have to, really take India by storm, what are the languages that we have to obviously, be present in? And English, of course, is there, which is great. Hindi is important. It's very, very important to have your Hindi piece ready. I think for the South, Tamil is also there. So even when in TV, right, when you look at, any channel that's launching, they will always look at English, Hindi, and Tamil. So these are the three which are very, very important as well. Of course, English is something that I have found has been great for a particular audience. But Hindi is important. I mean, today when I go out to train in sales, they're like, sir, aap Hindi mein kyun nahi karte? So hence, we did a Hindi session, and the impact that really happened was far greater. So I'm cognizant of the fact that, yes, that is something that has to be there. So multiple languages is a must. And if it's not your strength area, again, collaborate with people, train people, other trainers in your content, who are in that region. I mean, someone else talking Punjabi, I mean, dude, okay, come, I'll help you, curate that content. I mean, today, even a lot of the sales content of Grants is being translated into Hebrew, is being translated into Spanish and French, because that's truly how it happens. And you may not be the right person to do it every time, but there are great people out there who can and will be willing to collaborate with you and make that happen as well.
So basically, it's just about understanding the market. I mean, the pre-production that you do and where you're going and who you're talking to, and where they'll be comfortable. In some places, they'll be comfortable to try and talk to you in your language. I've noticed that as well. And they almost take umbrage because you're insisting on talking in Hindi when they're speaking in English, which is not their first lange. So that's another, these are all complex moments when you suddenly, it's almost politicized. Should I continue like this? Should I talk to that person like that? You don't want to disrespect them in any way.
Yeah, I think you have to, again, fact find, your audience. You have to know who you're speaking to. I think you have to be very clear to come into an audience where, if they can't read you, I mean, you'll have blank faces and they can't understand you. You'll have people falling out of sleep. The phones will be coming on and you'll be like really, really demotivated. So obviously very important to do your fact finding, before you get into any speaking or training.
And then not just the language, the whole localization of the subculture you're talking about, the references you're making, the whole thing comes into play, which, I think we learned that lesson on the road a bit too late, but the Gaurav Bhagat Academy will teach you. And you don't have to suffer like us in MTV. 20 years to catch up with the rest of the corporate world. So let's talk about the GBA courses, the 21st Century Revenue Wizards Developing Entrepreneurs. What is that?
Yeah. So we run a program which is actually called Scaling with GB, and in Scaling with GB, it's actually a 8-week, and so a crash course, so to speak, which would lead anyone who is interested in entrepreneurship to take a journey similar to mine. Like in terms of what are the things that I've learned over the years that I think people who are starting out today or looking to scale today would really need. And we start out, of course, on things like goal setting and finding your why. Right. The reason why I said Simon Sinek and finding your why, because agar aapke goals nahi hai, and if your why is not in place, you're really going to struggle. And a lot of times I go into large organizations, companies that are doing hundreds and hundreds of crores of turnover, and I'm talking to the sales head and I'm saying, tell me about your goals. He's like, itna sale hai, itna karenge. I'm like, tell me about your goals. He's like, itna paisa tha, itna karenge. I said, dude, like your goals, like tell me about, you as a person, like, family, relationship, lifestyle, mental. He's like, sir, socha hi nahi. I'm like, matlab, kaise bani ye, 4,000 crore ki company, right? If this is the mindset, it's just broken. So we start out with the basics on the why, the goal setting. We talk about sales. We talk about, managing money, because people struggle with money. So, the money and the manpower aspect, the resources, time management. So really one of the courses I'm very, very proud about, that we do. And it's something that has taken people, especially during the pandemic, to the next level, which is really gratifying as a coach and trainer.
I think also what you're doing is getting to the point, because in the 21st century, just going through 13 MBAs and 4,000 books is not going to help. An 8-week course sometimes is the need of the hour for this generation.
Yeah.
Let's be honest, it's just not going to wait.
No.
So maybe that's just the way forward. One last quick one before we go to break, and this is I love this one. Importance of business storytelling for success. The storytelling of the business.
The most important aspect, right? We spoke about Tinkle Comics and Uncle Pie and as a 7-year-old and all of that. It's truly, okay, facts will tell, but stories will sell. Okay. And I'll repeat that just in case, that was missed by some of the audience. Facts will tell, but stories will sell. Once you go out there and you tell your stories, people will connect, right? And there's, scientific surveys and tests that have been done where they would put, all the electrodes on your head and stuff and in the audience's head. And when stories are being told, the same parts of the brain actually light up. So people are actually connecting. I always tell people, go out there and tell stories. I said, the logic, to koi bhi bata dega, koi bhi samjha dega, feature, advantage, benefit, to koi bhi kar dega. But when you start telling stories about, your journey, your product, your why, and all of that, it truly takes things to the next level. So storytelling is an art that really needs to be mastered by everyone.
And so what you're saying is you have to get the emotional connect going with the logical connect, or the emotional connect is more important?
Emotional connect is more important first. Okay, the biggest mistake that salespeople make. Let's just say if I was coming in to sell you something, right, and I just started talking, and you met me for the first time, you don't really know me, and I start talking about, this phone is so freaking awesome, and it's got these features and this and that, and you're like, okay, this is great. But then if I start with a story, if I start with building the emotional connect first, okay, and what happens with a lot of salespeople, not only in India, but globally, they start with logic. And when the sale is not coming their way, towards the end, they're like, sir, kar lo na, le lo na, target miss ho jayega, jute padenge. Now they're getting emotional. But Cyrus, initially you were emotional, right? And now towards the end, you're becoming logical, right? And you're like, nahi samajh aaya, price nahi baith raha, whatever, So I think it's very, very important for people to start with emotion, close with logic. I think that's a big, big insight for people who go out there and sell as well.
Lesson learned in 30, 35 minutes. We've picked up a few for free. But the GBA is where you want to go if you want to learn it properly and thoroughly and get the confidence to take on the corporate world and the world in general. But now we're going to into a quick break. Gaurav is still with us and we'll call Silvery Antariksh on. Silvery?
Yeah.
Not a business graduate. He's an architecture graduate who's now a stand-up comedian. Another wonderful story of Mumbai. We have about 10 engineers this month who have all passed their degrees and are superstars in creative fields. No wasted spots. But Gaurav, on the other hand, you've given them a chance, I think, to learn at a faster pace. And I would think a more practical education should evolve. We mentioned this earlier. Education has to keep up with the time. We just can't teach the same thing for the last 300 years. So
very true. Very true.
We'll just take Gaurav. We'll just take an ad because you're all about that. We have to make sales, right? So please enjoy this ad. It's from the heart. There's an emotional connect in the beginning. Watch this. I took a wrong turn yesterday. No, not while driving. I'm talking about the Slay X Blend coffee, the wrong turn latte. You have to check that out. It's just so perfect for me because it's India's strongest coffee. And as you know, I'm all about strength. And it says flex your biceps. And it also says just look at your boys here. I can't even catch my boys. That's about it. Everybody show your boys. That sounds a little vulgar. Silvery, let me see your boys. Wow. Do we dare ask Gaurav and upset him? No. Too much emotional connect. Yeah. Anyway, it's a delicious unsweetened coffee that just kickstarts your brain when you need it. So it's a perfect coffee to start your day. I dare say I'll be taking a lot more wrong turns from now on. Wrong turn latte. I also got myself a graveyard. Again, not talking about the place where I go at night to talk to my friends. This is true, Gaurav. I'm a creepy man. I'm talking about the Slay X Coffee Blend Americano, the graveyard. Absolutely amazing. Slay X is India's strongest coffee. It's perfect for my mornings, especially when I feel like I need a real pick-me-up. It could well be your next favorite blend of coffee as well. Please check it out. What are you waiting for? Order India's best rated coffee today on Swiggy and Zomato. Slay Coffee, India's best coffee experience. Follow me at Instagram and Twitter on Bored Brocha. I'm so bored, I need your help. I need your love. I need your touch. Okay, just follow me. But it's true of ads, exactly what you're saying, isn't it? The best ads do have that emotional connect in the ad and then you sort of get to the point.
True that.
I'm just thinking of like Hamara Bajaj, you mentioned the Bajaj.
Look at Cadbury's, right? I mean,
Cadbury's only that,
Yeah, the ad which has now been redone. Yeah. So,
it's the same line, it's the same feel, just that emotional, whatever success. By the way, I did one of them. But you probably wouldn't remember running into the Maidan and all that nonsense. And
the original one.
No, the original one was much better. I was somewhere in the middle. Yeah. All right. I think we can get into the AMAs. I'm sure there'll be questions. Silvery, would you like to ask anything?
Yeah. Before this, I would my camera just went off.
That's fine.
I would like to ask. Say someone is getting into corporate space now, like after the pandemic. Only now they're getting into the corporate world. What advice or tips would you give someone like that?
Yeah. Super question, and thank you for that. And interestingly, there's a big thing that's being made out of the fact, before and after. The fundamentals haven't changed. right? It's still the same things that mattered before, which will matter, even today and in the world of tomorrow. So those fundamentals are very, very important, right? You have to focus on authenticity. You have to focus on relationships. You have to focus on, showing up and truly show up to blow up. I know in the questions, I see a lot of people saying, how can I get my attention? How do I get myself attention? It's very, very important to also, and I love this particular word. It's actually called omnipresence. Okay, you have to be everywhere. You have to, really, step up and take whichever opportunity you can. I mean, be on Cyrus's podcast, right? Have your own podcast, do your YouTube things. I mean, there'll be people who won't be there. I mean, initially when we all started, kaun dekhta tha, kaun sunta tha, the audience se log gaaliyan nikalte the, right? So it's very, very important to stay in action, and the basics and the fundamentals haven't changed. I think there's just such a big thing that's made about like, hey, the pandemic and this and that. Nothing's changed. Right, stick to the basics. I mean, those basics are, still very much in play. They have been for thousands of years. Okay, when we talk about sales, I mean, go back to the greats. I mean, even the ancient Babylonians, where we talk about the greatest salesman and, all of that in the times of, prehistory also, when caravans were making their way from India to the spice routes and, all of that. Nothing's changed. Nothing's changed. Right? It's just the mediums that we have, the ways that we have for putting out our message, for spreading our message, and for doing what we need to do. Those may have changed. The vehicles have changed. But at a fundamental level, the basics still work.
Yeah, but similarly in ancient Babylon, they had a very simple premise. They'd tell the guy, either you help us build the construction or we kill you. And it worked really well for 400, 500 years. Now we got to go and, drop contracts and, pension plan and health benefits and no end to it. Yeah, we spoiled a good thing. Anyway, let's get the AMAs going, and Gaurav can answer.
One more thing though, in the notes was mentioned that millennials' productivity is rebooting the business culture of India. Like how, could you talk a little about that? Like how does that work? Like how is that happening?
I love the energy that millennials and Gen Zs are, bringing to the table. Of course, we missed that ourselves by a few years. But the point is, I love the energy that the millennials and the Gen Zs actually bring. So we have a lot of young people in our organizations. We work with a lot of young people today as well. I love the thought. I love the mindset. The only thing that I wish a little more from them is that they just need to be a little more patient. Truly, I know this is the Instagram, generation, and there is the reels and all of that. And 7 seconds is our attention, where sometimes, goldfish, beats us as far as, attention, everything else goes. But I think that once they pick a path, just need to stay committed for a little longer. Truly, everyone talks about the fact as how, we have, maybe 55, 60% of our country that is today millennials and, lesser, but great things to happen. But I think patience is very, very important. It's something that they would do well. And another friend of ours, in fact, the guy who's perhaps behind the original Cadbury's ad was Bharat Puri, who was, also the managing director of Cadbury's and now Pidlite. And he's a senior from Sana. And he would always say, I just wish people would play it as a test match and not as a T20. I was interviewing for my book, Deep Kalra, from Make My Trip. And again, he said that assume that when you start out and get into something, pehle 2 se 5 saal kuch nahi hone wala. It's a write-off. Okay, that's just, you want to invest. And today when you tell people 2 to 5 years, they're like, are you serious? That's a third of my life, right? But you need to stay the path. So I think that's something that's very, very important.
But on a personal level, is it okay to hate millennials and Gen Zs and all that? Because they're very irritating, especially their lingo, and their attitude, their casual approach to things, or appears to be. Then of course they become multimillionaires and you don't know what to say. But sometimes I just want to choke one of them. Is that wrong, Gaurav? Or something?
I mean, I'm sorry, Cyrus. I know you have to see me every day and all.
Okay, more Gen Z. You're not Gen Z, bro. You're an old man now. Yeah. You're us. What we are to you, that's what you are to them. Remember, it just keeps going on this cycle. Yeah. Come, let's get in the AMAs. Let's get a few questions in.
Yep. All right. This first one, AMA, comes in from Tarun Kaushik. He says, talking about winging it, do you think people with limited knowledge but excellent presentation skills move much ahead in life? In short, what's more important, knowledge or communication?
That's bullshit walk.
Super question, Tarun. And a lot of people think they can actually just go ahead and wing it. And I mentioned that before, because if you keep trying to do that over time, you will trip up and fall. Okay, because it's very, very important to, like I said, do your research, do your fact finding. That's something that's very, very important. Communication is core. Sometimes even my wife will come and say that, you're not communicating and you're a terrible, communicator. So truly, the quality of communication is the quality of your life. And this is for everyone. This is with your kids, your wife, your parents, your stakeholders.
Somebody else's wife. Maybe not.
Yeah. So communication, for sure. I think that really is, the core area. And presentation is super. If you are someone who's gifted and someone who can go out there and make a presentation, super. I remember when I made my first presentation, and it was at one of these small forums where I got up and I spoke for 3 minutes, and someone came to me and they said, "Bhai, aap karte kya ho?" And I said, corporate gifting company hai, gifts and promotions karta hu. But he said, "Are you sure you're not a coach, trainer, speaker?" Because he said, "Sala, piche jo banda mara pada tha, wo bhi uth ke, he also started standing up and listening to you when this really happened." So he said, "You seem to be a guy who can wake the dead." And I wrote that down that day. And this is 12 years ago. I didn't even know anything about coaching, training, or anything else. But that thought stayed with me. And I just have worked on becoming a better presenter and always making more and more happen. And today when I go in and make some global pitches to some of the largest organizations in the world, I mean, I flew into New York pre-pandemic and I closed Deloitte in one meeting. And this is a global contract. But it happened by the power of presentation. And the guy's like, "Are you from India?" I said, "Yeah." He's like, "Dude, I didn't know Indians could speak and present like you did." I'm like, "It's
that's a bit racist.
Interesting country."
Yeah,
It was a
What do you
room
think?
full
We're
of
all
5 white
Canadians?
guys.
What is the other one?
Yeah, and I'm
VJ,
like,
turn the
dude,
car. Yeah.
I think their idea was Abu from The Simpsons, perhaps.
Yeah. But just to take that a little further, so you're self-trained. You're not like an auditor, or you're not someone who comes from the arts or something. Sorry about that. That's just a critic. I'll try and stop
No,
her.
so self-trained, as in yes, in the sense that I did start out on my own, but I've always had access to great people, great resources, trained with some of the best people in the world. You can't do it on your own. You have to have an ecosystem of success that you have to be a part of as well. So I've worked with guys like Grant Cardone, Taki Moore, Richard Dolan. I mean, some of the best in the world. But obviously, initially it was a lot of hustle on your own. But you can everyone should actually go ahead and work on improvement.
It goes back to the winging it point in a sense, because the fact is that some people have it also, the ability to talk. Maybe it's because you're very passionate and sincere about what you do. That must be 50% of the reason. But I'm also sure there are people who are really good at what they do, but they're so boring to listen to. But you have a lot of respect for their work, but you can't hear them for more than a minute.
Yeah.
Sorry. Like this person here who's not paying attention. Mary. We stop the program for 4 seconds while I try to deal with her. They'll unmute my mic. I mean, they'll mute my mic if she goes on.
Got it.
Take the next one.
Should we just take a break, Cyrus, and then come back?
Let's take a break while I try and sort out the problems I have with the ladies. This time the 4-legged ladies. Not to say that the older relatives of mine aren't on their hands and legs, but yeah, well. 1 sec. Mary! Was that too loud, guys? I'm sorry. I just have to say, I think I pulled my arm. I injured it in the morning, but my family just doesn't get it. Here's what happened. I was in the gym doing my business, lifting weights, drinking water at the same time, cycling, bench pressing, the works. And on my 7th bench press of 1,000 pounds, I never go lower, I was lifting and suddenly my daughter enters excited and distracted me, and she says, "Dad, have you heard?" And I said, "Heard what?" While still doing my bench pressing. And she says, "You didn't hear? You can get Kotak home loans at only 6.5% interest." You know what happened? I couldn't believe it. So I just dropped everything. The bar went out of my hand. The weights fell all over. Mrs. Sharma is in hospital as we speak. I apologize wherever she is. And it was a complete accident. But can you blame me? I mean, when you hear that, everybody's going to go completely berserk. So remember, she said, get Kotak home loans at only 6.5%. And I want to tell my daughter, thank you very much for this. But when you tell this kind of information to someone, please always preface it with, और rather बताने से पहले से कृपया ध्यान रखें. कृपया ध्यान रखें. But 6.5%, truly incredible. So before doing anything else, I took Mrs. Sharma to the hospital. She's much better right now. Of course, she wants me to stay and hold her hand, the one that's not injured. But you must tell your driver, Kotak Mahindra Bank pe rokna, and let's make money simple. This is from Kotak. Let's make money simple. Also check out my new podcast, Come Home to Kotak. It's out now on the IVM podcast apps and website and all other streaming platforms. 6.5% home loans. Siluri, you're going in after the podcast, right?
Yeah, right after this.
Closest.
I've already applied. I'm just going to go collect now.
There you go.
All right. The next question comes in from Janil Bain. Janil Bain asks, Gaurav, what are your views on the edtech companies in India?
I mean, truly, right? I mean,
We discussed.
Yeah, just take a look at what's happening in this space. And I think it's been fantastic what's happened with Byju's and what's happened, with even the White Hat Juniors and all these guys who really come up in this space. I mean, fantastic. And truly looking to solve a problem. which need to be solved. We were talking briefly about how the education system's really been broken, how a new skill set is today required. Many of these are actually stepping up and filling that entire gap. So which is great, and kudos to that. I just wish that many of them would stay true to the cause and not be digress or get distracted by investor pressure. I just hope that the reason why they started their organizations initially, I just hope that that stays in place, and it's not just the greed for growth and IPOs and valuations of unicorns and deca unicorns and hexa unicorns. I just hope that that doesn't divert from the core purpose, because I'm sure when many of these companies started, they truly started with the context of changing lives, and I hope that doesn't just change to exploitation, because that would be a pity. But good things happening in the space, no doubt.
But how do you control an investor in the sense that once they put their money in, you can't tell them not to interfere, right? I suppose that how do you do that?
It's a tightrope walk, and I always tell people it's very, very glamorous to go out there and seek funding and seed capital and then venture capital and PEs and all of that. As far as one can, I think one should really not fall prey to that as far as possible. Try and go the conventional route of self-funding, go through debt. Of course, there may be a time where it's not enough, but hopefully at that time you've already scaled your organization enough and you already have enough presence that you can actually be on the table with the investor saying that, okay, I'm not going to give you 51% of my company so that you now, have me by the, and hence it just becomes a more reasonable conversation where you can be someone who stays true to where you started your organization.
Or you just have to have really good investors, I suppose, who sort of believe in you and realize that more money will be made by backing the entrepreneur and not by interfering. I'm sure
there are many of those. There are many of those out there as well. So agree 100%.
Still, find those for us. They don't ever hear the program. They just put money in. Slay Coffee, well done. And Intel. Anybody left out? Remind me. Next one.
All right. Next one comes up from Prithvi. He says, I'm sure e-commerce, that is infinite infra, is making a big difference from when you started with Narendra Modi. But why are today's startups not happy with the government?
Yeah, there are two areas that I kind of stay away from. One is politics and the second is religion. And not that I have anything against any religion or any politician. I'm sure they're all going out there and doing a great job as well. I think people don't need to go down those paths. I mean, again, there will be a lot of noise, there'll be a lot of commentary, there'll be a lot of negativity and positivity, and there will be a lot of emotions run very, very high when it's about religion, when it's about politics. Chodo yaar, kaam dhanda karo. I mean, you are out there, to make a difference to people's lives. You're out there to empower, you're there to bring on more people into your ecosystem, create employment. Ye sab baatein matlab theek hai, it makes for a good conversation over slay coffee, or over a drink here and there. But kaam dhande mein time nahi hai iske liye. Kaam dhanda karo hai, matlab leave politics to the politicians and leave religion to the religious aspects. My advice to the youth: there's too much to be done. Life is short. We only have 24 hours a day, and we need to make them count. So this is something that is trivial and don't even waste your time. There's too much to be done in the world today.
Well, on the other hand, Gaurav, you can't completely divorce all this, right? For example, Bitcoin, we're all trying to learn more about it, and it's the flavor of the year at the moment. And yet, you always worried that Indian government, how Chinese government pulled out, or American government, suddenly, or Western government say this is not happening. So there's always that big cloud. So how can they go together. And that's the big insecurity for a lot of people getting involved with Bitcoin.
Yeah.
Otherwise, there's no stopping it.
Yeah. Super question on cryptocurrency. And, I've been someone who's investing. Since I was 16, I created the stock market game. That's the first board game that I actually created, which was bought by Leo Toys.
The stock market game we used to play?
Yeah. So Leo Toys made bull and bear fighting and all that. So that was the game that I created.
Oh, fantastic.
And,
what are you saying?
Leo Toys brought the rights from me and they sold 50,000. Up in the original version, so no one would have even seen it because it died in those.
That's distribution. Alag baat hai, huh?
So the point is, and I had Nikhil Kamath on my podcast, some time back, and Cyrus, by the way, I'd love to have you on my podcast as well. And we were talking about cryptocurrency and how there is this big FOMO. I missed it, yaar. $1,000 ka tha, aaj $65,000 ka ho gaya, it's just going on rising. And Nikhil said something which I loved. He said, you know what, you may have missed the bus, but the bus will always come around. Aaj Bitcoin hai, kal kuch aur hai, right? So never suffer from FOMO. Yes, you missed an opportunity. Agree. move on. There will be others. Wait for the next bus to come your way. And again, that's just something I'd like to say to the listeners as well.
I did have one FOMO moment in 2005 in Hyde Park. We had gone to do a show, and MTV India was also part of it. And Madonna was standing right there in the backstage with a couple of bodyguards, and I let it go. It was an opportunity where I wasn't even married then. No, I was, but who cares? Anyway, sad tales. Moving on. Next one.
All right. Another question comes in from Janil Bain. He says, what are your thoughts on fake gurus on YouTube who have grown super rich by hollow courses? How do you differentiate between a good one and a fake guru?
But well done
like
to them.
Janil Bain, man. Yeah. You've hit the nail on the head, and I love following some of these channels, because you really want to see what's happening in the world. And guys like, CoffeeZilla and the guys who've come on, in the world of, exposing these fake gurus. And the amazing aspect is that, again, this is something that hasn't changed. If you go back to the 40s and the 50s and the 60s, there were fake gurus, even there. My thought on that is, I think, every time a coach, trainer, guru comes into the world, they come in again with the perspective of kisi ka bhalai karna hai. They want to do good for someone. Somewhere along the way, perhaps, again, they may lose the way. It becomes about them, then the movement. And I think that kind of gets scary. I also think when people tend to get, charging exorbitant sums of money from people who can't afford it, I mean, it really hurts. I know people who have gone into debt, to pay 5 lakhs or more, for a particular coaching or training or something else. And then they came back and they said, kuch nahi hua, ab sirf 5 lakh ka credit card debt hai, loan hai. And that really hurts, right? But again, market forces, will always come into play. In the long term, you can't screw people over for too long, right? People today is the internet generation. People will see what's written on Facebook, and yes, you can take some of that money and you can hire, content hiding companies and PR companies that will, cover up the bad reviews. But eventually, word gets around. People will talk. So it's unfortunate, and I think again, yes, they will be there. It's something that's unavoidable. But just be again genuine and true to your cause. Connect with someone who you can connect with, get trained from them, see what people are saying, have conversations, talk to alumni, etc. It's unfortunate, but it's there. There's some great channels on the internet which talk about some of these guys. Some of them may be because of personal vendetta, which is something you should be mindful of as well. But again, in time to come, there will be equilibrium, there will be balance, and it's the best and the authentic who always win in the long term.
But Gaurav,
it's not only money that's going to play a role.
Gaurav, I just want to ask you here, but shouldn't, and I don't mean this in a facetious, funny way, don't you think there's a little bit of respect for a guy who can make a business out of nothing and for a period of time actually have people putting their money in, believing in his myth? So in a sense, that's also entrepreneurship of a sort. I know he doesn't give you any real service, but in terms of sales, I mean, the guy's made the sale. If we look at it from a non-judgmental way, I'm saying.
Yeah. No, I totally get it. And like I said, I just wish there was a little more empathy, in some of, the people in the space, where if someone comes to you and says that I can't afford, to make this kind of investment in you right now, but, we're willing to, pay whatever we can at the moment. And instead of turning them away, which I know it's happened in certain cases by certain people in the industry, I think it'd be nice if they say, you know what, I'm going to take a chance on you. Just like Madhu took a chance on me and said, bhai, tere paas kuch bhi nahi hai, par mujhe lag raha hai tu khich lega. And, the world of gifting is a better place for that. And, hence, I think sometimes it's just about just being empathetic, I think that's something that's very important. But it's unfortunate. The fake guru thing is there. And I just wish, it would not blow into a pandemic.
Also, gifting and sensitivity go together. I mean, it's an emotional response in any case, the fact that you're gifting, even the most mundane gift. But I can't think of anyone who says, oh God, I've got a gift. A gift is a gift. You feel a little better when somebody sends you the most stupid gift because there's something in a wrap thing or whatever that comes to you. And yeah. Silvery, you haven't sent me a gift in a long time, sweetie. Kya ho gaya? Abhi 377 annulled ho gaya. We can talk freely. What is the problem?
Because sometimes you said, Cyrus, that you're against gifts. Like you don't think they're authentic.
My father said send the receipt with the gift because of income tax purposes. It's a Parsi mind. You have to understand that. Okay, just send the damn receipt. You guys don't send the receipts. Ye bhi Punjabi hai, Gaurav. Samjhao. He thinks that the law can be made up on the spot under drive-in is Uber. Chalo, let's take a couple more. Yeah.
Next up, there's a couple of similar questions. I'll ask one of them. Tarun Kaushik says, should we ask for a salary based on our market value or on our previous salary? And another similar question is that how do you put forward to the company that they should value you good instead of your standard percentage based on your previous salary, basically? So how do you determine that?
Yeah, so interesting questions both, and thank you for that, Tarun. And a lot of people, I believe, when they come in or go out for interviews, it's always around, oh, my last package was this, and I'm now swapping, so my next package should be this. Itne percentage, ka jump to hona hi chahiye, and which is why people really make a lot of jumps and things around that as well. I think that itself is a little broken in terms of the mindset of people. I don't think you should really be jumping just because of you're expecting a slight hike. I think it should again be about connecting with the organization, connecting with their values, connecting with the people that you're going to be working from, the product or the service that you're going to be selling. Very, very important insight from the sales perspective as well. Are you really convinced? Are you really sold on the product or service that you're offering? Right? I always tell people this story as well in my sales trainings. I said, are you a mercenary? Or are you someone who really believes? Like, and sometimes people will say, "मैं तो sales का बंदा हूँ, मैं तो गंजे को भी कंघी बेच दूँ." I'm like, dude, the bald guy doesn't need a comb, right? The bald guy needs a hair transplant. He maybe needs some, nourishing hair lotion, etc.
That's really mean.
Why would you do it, right? Yeah, why would you do it, right?
Yeah.
I mean, the other example, of course, being selling air conditioners to an Eskimo or ice to an Eskimo. Dude, the Eskimo can go out and bring in all the ice that he needs. The Eskimo needs a nice blanket that he can cozy up with, his partner with, or a nice heater in the house, etc. So I think it's very, very important when people come to an organization. I think they must believe in the organization, the values, the product, and the service. I think if that comes through, definitely the what they really get, both in terms of, while it might be a little less in terms of when you sign on, in due course they'll see the value. The management, everyone will see the value, and you will grow with that organization. I always tell people in my companies, I'm like, don't see yourself in terms of the package that you're getting now, but see yourself as potential owners, investors, stakeholders in this organization that will take it, to the next century and beyond, an organization that live beyond all of us. And I think if that is the mindset that people come in when they come in for jobs and employment, everything will change.
So then, by going by your, I would say it's a correct judgment. They have to give us equity, because now I want to be part of the company, so treat it as part of the company. So that's a better way to go than just
earn it.
A simple salary.
Earn it. Equity won't come to you first.
But how do you answer? How do you answer the question? See, it's a very complex question when they say, "Aapko kya lagta hai? What do you think you should get paid?" Because how do you answer that without being cocky, overconfident, or underselling yourself? How do you do that?
Yeah. So let's just say when I, as an employer, am evaluating someone who comes into the organization from the first time, of course, there is a certain set of skills and a certain set of things that I was looking for from this particular person. Does this person, tick off the check boxes? And it's not only about knowledge, it's also about attitude. To me, I always hire for attitude first. I said attitude is the most important. Everything else can be taught, right? So that's something that's very, very important as well. And what I'm looking for really is in terms of, we have certain core values like, integrity, etc., which will only come forth in due course. I mean, you can't, having a conversation, you can't say, you're looking like someone with high integrity, but it's going to happen in terms of your work, your actions, and everything else as well. On that point where you mentioned about, equity, because that's become a big thing that, can I get ESOPs? Hey, if that company doesn't list or if that company doesn't have an exit, those ESOPs are what toilet paper, right? I mean, you can basically wipe your backside with it. So, a lot of people will come and they'll say, "Maine wo chhod diya aur main yahan ghus gaya because ESOP mil raha hai." Bhai, matlab, what is the long-term vision of that organization? Will they ever actually list, and will those ESOPs ever mean something? So I think those are important aspects to really ask, and something that I would be my advice to Tarun as well.
All right. We take a last one, Sivri.
Last one. Yeah. Vineet Khandelwal asks, Gaurav, can you tell us a little bit more about your podcast?
Okay, thank you for that, Vineet. Yeah, so the podcast is relatively new. I love the medium and the forum, and of course, very, very influenced by Cyrus and all the other amazing podcasters out there as well. And I started only a year back approximately, and we do a fortnightly podcast. It's called the Smashed Bashed Yet Not Dashed podcast. And we've had some amazing people who've come on. The first season was all about me and my stories, and it's there. You will find it on all the main platforms as well. And of course, like I said, love to have you guys come on as well. I know that's one of the comments that have come in. So based on your schedules, love to have you on the Smash Bash Yet Not Dashed podcast, where I can hear some of your Smash Bash moments and your advice to the world, because we've had some good people. We've had Grant Cardone, Nikhil Kamath, Papa CJ was there. He's a junior from school. There was Advaita Kala who was there last week. That episode should be out soon as well. Good people. We've had good people on it. Smash Bash Yet Not Dashed, and it's fun. I love the conversations that I have. Love being on the other side of the table, asking some of those questions as well. And truly, Cyrus spoke about this earlier today. When you talk about those failures, those Smash Bash moments, and what you intend to do for the world, I think that's something that's really come through on those podcasts, and that's I mean, it would be great if everyone does watch it on YouTube or listen to it on some of the podcasting platforms.
Let's quickly mention his academy, GBA, a great place for you to pick up not just nuggets, perhaps life lessons, which take you all the way to the top. And they always come in handy, as we know. But the one thing is it fair to say that this is a story of a man, Gaurav Bhagat, who goes from riches to rags to riches, which is an incredible story.
You will not believe it, but this morning when I was thinking about this, that's the first thing that came to my mind. We were from a family that was extremely privileged, traveled the world, had access to everything, the things that you would not even hear of. When I'd go up to Sanaa, people would always say, man, you have Tang, and you have, Chips Ahoy, and you have, a Swatch watch, and you have Bugle Boy as a t-shirt. So stuff that, people could not even believe in the 80s. Then from there having nothing, I wouldn't say bankrupted, but almost there. And then from there bouncing back to today, being rich, not only in terms of the assets that I own, but in terms of what I give back. So you hit the nail on the head there, Cyrus. Wow.
Well, I think there's a saying, I don't know if it's Rumi, and it's obviously in Persian, which says basically going from rags to riches is good, but going from riches to rags back to riches is great. That's a like this cleansing sort of thing, to go through that. Rags to riches, not to put it down. Many people have done that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sylvie, last thing.
Sorry, there's one correction. Earlier, I had asked a question from Prithvi about the e-commerce, internet infra is making a big difference from when you started. And it's in brackets, it said with Narendra. I misunderstood that to say Narendra Modi. That actually meant Gaurav's office person, Narendra. Sorry.
Also Delhi-based. These things can happen. Also Delhi-based.
Yeah, sorry. My bad.
Okay. Gaurav has got a diplomatic smile, which he's keeping inside. He's not going to cross left or right when it comes to that. A good way to do business and stay safe. Gaurav, it's been a real pleasure. Thank you so much, not just for all your learnings, but just your life story, which is, I'm sure, going to inspire a lot of people. We've got huge positive feedback on the chat from lots of people enjoying you. I'm sure your podcast is going to be great as it goes on. So off we go to make sales, all three of us. See you guys. Have a good weekend.
It was a pleasure. And I look forward to, like I said, having you guys on the Smash Bash
We'll be there.
podcast as well.
We'll be there.
Awesome.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Okay, catch us on any of the podcasting apps, please. We beg you, we need you. Send us your questions on Twitter, on Cyrus Says In. Or you can email us, even if you're not female, on whatcyrussays@gmail.com.
Hey everybody, it's been a great week on the IVM Podcast Network. On Cyrus Says, actor and author Kalki Ketla talk about her amazing new book, Elephant in the Womb. As Cyrus and Kalki go through some funny illustrations in the book, Kalki brings up what people don't talk about when it comes to pregnancy. On The Habit Coach, Ashton explains an interesting perspective on the Teflon mindset. On Smarter with Sid, Siddharth debates whether thrift stores will remain a niche thing or accepted by the Indian masses. On Press Decode with Vagda, Sareen and Sarah, they discuss how India dropped by 7 spots in the latest Global Hunger Index rankings. On Hansvani, here's this fascinating story. It's titled Helium and it's written by Lalit Karthike and narrated by Casey Shankar. And it's such a really, really good thing. Definitely check that out. Do follow us on social media. We're IVM Podcast on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. And remember, if you're enjoying this show or any of other shows for that matter, please do tell a friend. And finally, we'd like to thank our sponsors this week, Cred, Bank of Baroda, Quarter, CoinSwitch, Kuber, Slay Coffee, Intel, Kotak Mahindra Bank, and Oxfam India. Thank you so much for making this possible.
पेश खिदमत है आपकी शान में हमारे अंजुमन से. Hi, I am Sadaf.
And I'm Arshit. खाने का इतिहास, economics, policy, psychology, सब है मेन्यू पे.
Only on the Naan Curry podcast every Wednesday. सिर्फ IVM podcast app या वेबसाइट पर या फिर जहां से भी आप अपने podcast सुनते हो.